Right now on Law and Crime Report, peaceful protests and violent clashes. From Portland, Oregon, where a wall of veterans protected Black Lives Matter protesters from federal officers.
We will not retreat.
To Louisville, Kentucky, where armed civilian militia are calling for justice for Breonna Taylor. People taking to the streets as the nation honors the life of civil rights hero John Lewis. Plus, more arrests in the gruesome triple murder the Florida sheriff says was a massacre.
This is evil in the flesh. This is a guy who can hurt you just because it's the right thing for him to do at that moment in time with his 3 brain cells.
And an update in the Tiger King case you don't want to miss. Law and Crime Report, diving into today's true crime and legal stories. It's Monday, July 27th, 2020. All right, welcome back to Law and Crime Network and the Law and Crime Report. My name is Bob Bianchi. It is 7/27/2020. We're going to go into Breonna Taylor. A Black militia group was calling for a speedy investigation and went face-to-face with a far-right militia group in a standoff in Louisville, Kentucky that was really quite extraordinary to watch. This group called acronym NFAC, which is Not Effing Around Coalition's Grandmaster Jay says one of their members accidentally fired some rounds during that protest, and it was really quite frightening. Let's take a listen.
We didn't come here to fight anybody. Our mission has been said over and over again. We are here for the protection.
Crowds of protesters and the wild card command of the 3 percenters were the only others we saw.
We're here just to make sure that everybody remains calm, let the protesters do what they want, keep everybody safe.
And aside from the gunshot that went off earlier in the day, things did stay safe. Grandmaster Jay, the leader of the group, tells us this march was part 2 of their process. Part 1 was talking to Attorney General Daniel Cameron about justice for Breonna Taylor.
Or if you tell me something that's not going to satisfy what these people want, I'm going to bring my people in just to emphasize that we really want the truth. And that's what today was.
Well, I have with me Lisa Lockwood and Linda Kenney Baden, 2 of our aces here at the Law and Crime Network. Guys, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Lisa, let me start with you, given your tactical SWAT experience as a law enforcement officer and as a great crime analyst. I tell you, I was looking at these pictures over the weekend, and it was extraordinarily frightening to see both sides kind of antagonistic to one another with all of these awesomely powerful weapons. I mean, it just was just like a tinderbox to me. And coming from a state that probably has the strictest gun laws, it just is so unsettling to me. What were your thoughts about that? And from a tactical point of view, what kind of spot were the police in to keep order there?
Yeah, that was an interesting come together, because what we had was the 3 percenters, which was the far right activist group in a militia. And then we also had the group of the NFAC coalition. So having them come together with the idea of being heavily armed can be daunting, can be scary. That's not something we're used to in our community, seeing these separate powers coming together. But the goal of this was to get their point across, because the Black militia, the intention was in a human rights type of civil process. 3 percenters showed up just to help keep the peace. And what was also interesting is both groups are both ex-military, composed of military groups, patriots.
Yeah, it was clear from my observations these folks were well-trained. Linda, they have met NFAC with the Attorney General, and what I found interesting by Grandmaster Jay's statement is that they want the truth to come out. But it seems like it's their perception of the truth, and he basically indicated, and if they don't get the truth, which I believe that they want charges filed, they're coming back. What is this doing to our judicial system? I mean, it's bad enough as it is, but I mean, the pressure put on, I can't even imagine being the prosecutor or a district attorney having to make a decision under these circumstances.
Well, Bob, I think there is a viewpoint, one that I kind of share, that it's much longer that we've had Breonna Taylor has been dead, has been shot, than the coronavirus in this country going rampant. And so people say, hey, wait a second. If this was a young minority kid who went into a house filled with what would be perceived as Caucasians and shot and killed somebody, he would be arrested already. So I think there already is the perception of unfair justice. And quite frankly, Bob, you and I both know that the criminal justice system does have a problem and does have to reform itself.
Yeah, but threats of violence to me or intimidation in some sort. Listen, I've investigated police-related shootings as a prosecutor. I'd never had anything like this happen. That took months to do because I wanted to double check, send it to multiple forensics and toxicologist experts so that when we finalize our investigation, nobody could possibly critique a thing we did. I'm not saying that that's happening here, but maybe it is as well. I don't know. Anyway, the Louisville mayor is in the mix of all this, and he's addressing the protesters. Let's take a listen.
2020, LMPD turned over its Public Integrity Unit file from its investigation to Attorney General Daniel Cameron's office, and has since complied with all of his requests for additional information and material. People need to know what happened in this tragedy, and we need to know soon. So now we're all waiting for him to announce his findings. I'm waiting the same as you. I have no control or influence over that process or the additional independent investigations being conducted by the Department of Justice and FBI, and I'm as frustrated as you are by how long it's all taking. Yes, the process needs to be thorough, but like you, I want a resolution. Breonna Taylor's family and our community deserve that. But while we are waiting for these investigative outcomes, I'm not waiting to pursue the cause of racial justice in Louisville, and particularly the need for public safety reform. People are demanding action, and we are acting, like signing Breonna's law, which bans no-knock warrants and mandates the use of body cameras per police officers serving search warrants, installing new leadership at LMPD and conducting a national search for a permanent chief with major public involvement, hiring an independent outside firm to conduct a top-to-bottom review of LMPD to help us understand strengths as well as weaknesses and implement changes necessary to improve public safety, working to create an independent civilian police review board with subpoena power to bring greater accountability and transparency, and strengthening the rules governing an officer's duty to intervene. These are substantial changes, but we know they are not enough, not nearly enough to soothe or heal the anger people feel about what happened to Breonna Taylor, because tragedies involving Black Americans dying at the hands of law enforcement have been happening for centuries. And to begin to really address structural and systemic racism, you have to reform the structures and the systems. Our citizens deserve more transparency and accountability with the investigative process of officer-involved shootings, period.
Lisa, listen, I don't disagree with these reforms. They sound like they're good to me. He indicates that this has been happening for decades. I think he may have said 100 years. Don't disagree with that. You know, well, where were you? Where was everybody? So that's my first question. It's a little pandering going on there. What do you think about these reforms? Anything else I could add to them?
No, I like the alignment. I like the ideas that he has, specifically body cameras. Body cameras were transitioning in when I was transitioning out of law enforcement, and it's something that keeps everything transparent. So you have cams on all officers, you have audio on all officers, and there are no questions later on whether or not somebody's doing something wrong. So it's just a matter of getting all the departments having that funding for the equipment to ensure that that is happening, because I think it's going to be able to let people know exactly what's happening on these scenes.
Yeah, no, Linda, when we started, we didn't have the body cams. We didn't have the motor vehicle recordings, the MVRs. And it has been enlightening, and has also exonerated a lot of police officers who were falsely accused. What's been your experience?
Well, you know, I was involved in the New Jersey case that ended up getting the body cams and the car cams for the New Jersey State Police when they shot the 4 minority kids on the turnpike. And they fought it. They absolutely fought it. But the cameras can actually tell a story that does exonerate whether it's a good shooting or a bad shooting. And with regard to Mr. Fisher, Mayor Fisher, well, at least finally he's getting the message out, and maybe he's getting the right message out. And that's what we need to do, Bob. I mean, I'm sitting here 20 years later after the New Jersey Turnpike shooting, and we're debating whether or not we should have police cameras on body cams on the police. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. You know, as a defense lawyer or as a civil rights litigator, Linda taught us a little bit about the I would call it exorcism that you would have to go through even to get a police officer's internal affairs record for a lawfully filed lawsuit, and how much that has changed.
Oh, sure. And it's still a problem in many states. So, although New York, for instance, is now opening up files where police officers have been accused of wrongdoing, and to get the files easier. But in some states, you can't get them. Period. End of discussion. They're considered personnel files, and you fight, and you fight, and you fight. And then what you find is the easiest way to get them is go to the insurance company who's insuring the municipality or the governmental body and say, "Excuse me, Mr. Insurance Company or Miss Insurance Company or Mrs. Insurance Company, how many claims have you had filed against this police officer?" So there was a roundabout way to do it, but you had to really go after it. And sometimes a judge would even quash it. So for every subpoena, Bob, as you know, that's quashed, there's a judge involved.
Yep. Well, I had a civil rights case where I think we were over 20 appearances in court trying to get internal affairs records on the officer, which is so important in order to establish your case under that law, which I felt was kind of outrageous. So that is at least being taken care of. Lisa, we talked about that last week, but unfortunately, I'm going to have to take a quick break. We'll be back on the other end.
This is the kind of card that has America talking. With it, people with Medicare are getting all-in-one coverage for their doctor visits, hospital care, prescription drugs, and more. This kind of insurance, called Medicare Part C, may also cover dental care, eyeglasses, hearing aids, fitness programs, vitamins, even healthy meals and rides to the doctor. With this kind of coverage, you do not need a Medicare supplement insurance plan. You will access your benefits through your Medicare Part C plan for one low and oftentimes $0 monthly plan premium. You deserve to get the most from your Medicare benefits. Call now for free information that may help you get more coverage for less money. There is no obligation to enroll. Whether for yourself or someone you love, call the number on the screen now. Call now.
Someone calls. They've won a lawsuit with a structured settlement. Or they have an annuity and only get a little of the money at a time. But they're buying a house, or they have medical expenses.
Or they need tuition, and they call J.G. Wentworth and they say, "Can you help?"
And we say, at J.G. Wentworth, helping you is what we do.
Call J.G. Wentworth to get your money now. It's a simple call, and you may be able to keep getting monthly checks in addition to a lump sum. Trusted by more than 50,000 people to get their money faster, with over $349 million in cash payouts. And we're rated A+ by the Better Business Bureau. There's no cost, no obligation, no pressure.
I tell people it's your money.
And I'll do all I can to help you get it now.
They're so relieved, so happy. I really love my job.
If you need your money now, call J.G. Wentworth at 877-CASH-NOW. That's 877-CASH-NOW. We're here to help.
Can your kitchen knife do this? How about this? Well, now it can. Inspired by the hit TV show Forged in Fire, is a once-in-a-lifetime knife so sharp and so strong it will cut everything in your kitchen, frozen or fresh. Forged in Fire's knives, surgical steel construction, and razor-sharp edge literally shatters the competition, so you can fillet your fish. Its professional handle won't slip, even chopping this frozen solid block of ice, and that torture won't dull its precision sharpness. Now you can get the Forged in Fire chef's knife for the low price of only $29.95, and when you order now, you'll get the Forged in Fire paring knife absolutely free. Order a second set of knives right now, and we'll give you free shipping on the entire order. And all Forged in Fire knives come with our 50-year guarantee, but you must order now.
Call 1-800-821-9245. 1-800-821-9245.
Okay, now we turn our attention to Portland, Oregon, where there's been a Black Lives Matter protest, as you know. Last week, we showed you a clip of a veteran from the Marine Corps, Dustin Obermeyer, who was actually assaulted by police officers. And man, this guy was taking some shots. Well, he returned back to the protest with a wall of vets, quote unquote, to show support for the protesters. Let's take a little look at that clip of him being assaulted. And boy, this guy could take a shot. He was trained well in the Marines. And also listen to his accounting of that scenario.
What are you doing? Use your words. What are you doing? Use your words. What are you doing?
I haven't done anything wrong.
Use your words.
What's going on, sir?
What is going on?
We need to know.
Who are you?
I was here on Saturday evening with Chris David. We were attacked. We decided that based on the requirements of the Constitution and the constitutional oath we all took, we needed to be out here to ensure, and we contacted other veterans to be out here to ensure that our citizens did not have their right to free speech and their right to protest and their right to assemble taken away from them by federal security forces here.
Okay, and so you were in the Marines?
Yes, I was.
And when did you serve?
I served in the Marines from 2001 to 2011.
Okay, so there's a lot of wartime during that era. Were you deployed?
Yes, I was deployed 3 times.
And I mean, watching what has unfolded here, how are you feeling about, the direction of things, the direction of the federal government, and how the forces here are being deployed?
Our veterans are here specifically to support the rights of the protesters to protest. That's the only thing we're here for.
Lisa, you're the expert in tactical operations, and we have federal authorities that are going into those locations uninvited by local police departments, relatively not identifying anything other than police in vans that are unmarked, snatching people off the street and throwing them into the van and taking them off. I don't know if there's been deconfliction here with regard to the local authorities to make sure that no one in law enforcement gets hurt, but what are your thoughts about all this?
It's a crazy time right now, I'll tell you that. Having these, Department of Homeland Security had gone in. They did have patches on their arms. They're not in the usual locations because it is required that you identify with the insignia what branch of government and law enforcement that you represent. Later, it was shown that they did have it, but in an obscure way, just like in military, in the battlefield, they're camouflaged in, they're there, but they're obscure. And what is the reasoning for that? And that's what the fear is. What is the reasoning that you're not able to identify who these officers are? And can they get away with some of these actions? Getting out the baton and going ahead and beating that veteran who was crossing a line. Again, once there's a line in the sand and they're trying to keep people at bay and people continually push officers back, that's when variances of uses of force come into play, less lethal. And that would be the baton, tear gas, taser, and that sort of thing.
Linda, Kenney Baden, I know that you have probably a tremendous amount to say, so I'll just throw it to you. What's on your mind?
Well, Oregon is where my son lives, so I'm obviously very interested in what is happening there. But there is also a picture on the internet that's circulating of a young woman, and there's an assault weapon right at her neckline, and all. And then there's somebody who's pretty tatted up, who says he's from the military, I guess, but we don't know, Bob. They could be mercenaries. The rumor is that they're hired under the Blackwater name, that is Mr. Prince's company that was used overseas. Betsy DeVos's brother, by the way. So that, the problem is that you can camouflage who they are, right? But they're fighting with American citizens here. And this is something we have not experienced. The whole idea for Homeland Security was to protect us against foreign terrorists. And all of a sudden, us are the foreign terrorists.
Yeah, a lot of what the founding fathers wrote about seems to, in many people's minds, be coming to fruition with armed national troops on the streets with regard to citizens. 60 people were actually arrested near a federal courthouse in downtown Portland for cutting through a fence and throwing fireworks and they're vowing that they are going to protect federal property, which would be, in fact, an appropriate thing for them to do. Let's listen to the acting Secretary of Department of Homeland Security, Chad Wolf.
What is occurring in Portland in the early hours of every morning is not peaceful protesting. These individuals are organized and they have one mission in mind: to burn down or to cause extreme damage to the federal courthouse and to law enforcement officers. At times, we also see them targeting city property. These individuals congregate in the same area night after night. We see them planning their attacks. And yet the city of Portland takes little to no action to stop or disperse this crowd. These individuals carry lasers, baseball bats, explosive fireworks, metal pipes, glass bottles, accelerants, and other weapons, all targeting federal facilities and federal law enforcement. And yet the city of Portland takes little to no action. These individuals have repeatedly destroyed protective fencing, extensively graffitied the courthouse, torn plywood down from the courthouse and lit it on fire, have erected barriers to block entrances to courthouses, attempted to breach the courthouse, have thrown explosive materials in the courthouse, and again, the city of Portland takes little to no action. My message is very simple. If you're looking to peacefully protest in Portland, the department respects your right to do so. Please do so away from the violent activity that's taking place near the courthouse on a nightly basis for your own safety. If you are a violent rioter looking to inflict damage to federal property or law enforcement officers, you need to find another line of work. We will not retreat. We will continue to take the appropriate action to protect our facilities and our law enforcement officers.
Okay, Lisa, fair enough. I mean, if you're going to be damaging federal property, federal authorities have the right to be able to protect that property. But the confusion that we have here is that you have a majority of peaceful protesters, and then you have maybe groups that kind of infiltrate to go in there to make them look bad or just looking to cause problems. How does law enforcement properly separate the wheat from the shaft, if you will, for those who are peacefully protesting versus those committing violent acts? It's a tough job, no?
It is. It's extremely tough. Even the initial protests with George Floyd that happened across the country, the opportunists who got involved and did more destruction and Antifa, et cetera, how do you draw the line to people who are behaving that way in opportunistic ways to cause mayhem? So we have a federal building. The police and personnel are there to make sure that it's protected. If anybody trespasses, you know who the aggressors are. You know who the ones that are going to cross the line, the ones that are armed with batons and bats and Molotov cocktails and fireworks, people who are trying to breach the fence and have the tools to do so, throwing over fireworks, et cetera. So you start to look at the hands, and all training, we discover that, looking into the hands of the individuals to find out who are the aggressors and have the tools that's going to cause the most destruction.
Linda, talk to me a little bit about the damage that these few rioters are doing to what are otherwise peaceful protests that are delivering a very serious and sound message. It's a shame. What are your thoughts?
Well, that is a shame, Bob, if you're going to damage the property and all, because that becomes the headline as opposed to the message that the protesters are trying to accomplish here. But here's the issue. Here's the problem is Chad Wolf is saying, well, they're organized. Well, you have to be organized in a peaceful protest if you're going to get your message passed. He's saying that they congregate in the same area. What does that have to do with anything? So I think there's a confusion also from the government about what the First Amendment involves and what you can do versus what you can't do, because a lot of times this whole it's an elevation by bringing people in with guns. Also, it's really an elevation. No one is sitting and talking. No one. All you see is what you're seeing in the headlines.
Linda, let me ask you a real question. You brought up the First Amendment right to protest. Are there limits on that? Can cities put limitations on where and how and when and you protest, or can they just let people just randomly go out on the streets and do whatever they want?
No, cities can under the Supreme Court rulings that are very old, can require permits if they wish. They can do a lot of different things. Just like you can't have a parade every day, which would be a First Amendment issue, right? Because you could block traffic and all. But they have to be reasonable limitations. And here, the city doesn't want to put the limitations on because right now they're feeling that by doing that, that's going to, again, elevate what's happening here because we seem to have more of an aggression against the peaceful protesters, and they don't want to do that. So that's really where we're standing right now.
All right, guys, thanks so much for the excellent commentary. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more of this fascinating subjects that we have left on the table for today. Okay, the Frostproof triple murder case in Florida. 3 men were killed on their way to go catfish fishing. Let's listen to the sheriff, Grady Judd from Polk County, Florida, discuss the gruesome details of this triple homicide.
Damien now is at the lake, and he has met up with, during this time frame, Kevin and Brandon, who are in the white truck. And they have turned their trucks so that they're door to door talking to each other in the middle of the road. Robert drives and pulls up behind the white truck that's driven by Kevin with Brandon in the passenger side. TJ exited his truck. When he did, Brandon got out of his vehicle and shined a light back to see who was pulling up behind them. TJ rushed up to Brandon, pushed him against the truck, pulled a handgun out, and said, "Where's Kevin?" Well, Kevin's sitting in the driver's seat right there. And he looks and sees Kevin. He runs around, he being TJ, runs around between the red truck and the white truck. He points the gun at Kevin, and TJ says, "Where's my truck?" Kevin goes, "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yeah, you do. Where's my truck? You sold the engine out of my truck." Kevin said, "I don't know what you're talking about." At that moment in time, according to the information we've received, TJ hits Kevin. Damien starts to open the door of his vehicle and is screaming at TJ, "Put the gun away, put the gun away, put the gun away." TJ's out of control, screaming, "Where's my truck?" And he starts shooting Kevin and Brandon inside of the white truck. It's estimated, and this is still under investigation, he shoots him 9 to 10 times between the two of them. Then he turns on Damien and begins to shoot Damien, who's got his door open but is in his truck, several times.
Well, Lisa, we have a very animated officer there. I don't know if that was the chief, I guess, the sheriff rather, actually giving the demonstrations of how the weapons were moving and what occurred here. Pretty solid investigation, a lot of detail. What are your thoughts about where we're going to be going from here on this triple homicide case?
Well, certainly I believe they have enough evidence. They went ahead with the charging and then charged the individuals who were with them in the truck as accessories after the fact for not getting involved, not reporting, not trying to stop TJ from doing what he did, which was basically executing 3 human beings for an apparent reason regarding a vendetta of an engine in the truck that he seemed to know nothing about. This whole thing was so happenstance that evening. They were going fishing, bumped into them at a Dollar General store, and then ended up following them there with the purpose of either having him say, "I want my engine back, give me my engine," and or "You're going to die because of it."
Yeah, Linda, to Lisa's point, this was a happenstance encounter in a supermarket of some sort, and that's how the whole thing materialized. And then they followed those folks that were going fishing, and that one individual, TJ, got out and he killed those 3 people. Put your defense lawyer hat on for a second with regard to the charges filed against the other people that were in the car, never got out, and didn't help. There seems to be a potential defense for those folks there, no?
Well, obviously, there's a potential cooperation agreement, and it sounds like one of them is cooperating. So that's the first thing. You wanted to be the first person in, right? And yeah, with the girlfriend of TJ, I mean, maybe the defense is that she's abused. She's a girlfriend that she's abused. She's scared of him. He's 26 years old. He has a record that is longer than I don't know, Highway 101 on the West Coast, the New Jersey Turnpike on the East Coast. It's unbelievable, and he's vicious. He was waiting charges or a trial for an aggravated assault. I mean, it's unbelievable. So that would be the defensive I'm looking at towards her.
What about the idea, Lisa, Linda, real quick, give me your thoughts about this, that in most jurisdictions, mere presence at a crime scene is not a crime. That this was, he was going to confront the guy. We had no idea he was going to jump out with a gun and execute these three people. We didn't assist, we didn't aid him, we didn't plan it with him. We didn't know it was going to happen. We were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. What do you think about that, Lisa?
What I would say is before the police found them, they had an opportunity to go to the police and say, this is what happened, to get themselves out of the situation versus keeping their mouths shut and not going forward with information. They just witnessed a triple homicide and said nothing.
Linda, do you have an affirmative obligation to go to law enforcement and advise them of something, especially after somebody just killed three people, maybe worried about your own safety?
Not really, Bob. If you could be the target of the charges, and they could be in the sense if you're going to say, well, they obstructed justice by not going to the police. But really, they're going to say, hey, look, here's my fishing rod. Okay, I have it right here. I don't use it because it kills fish and all, but it was a gift. But my point is that they're going to just say, hey, I am traumatized. I'm scared of this guy. I didn't go to the police because I thought he would kill me.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting case to watch with regard to those folks that were in the car, in my mind. Let's listen to a little bit about what the sheriff thinks the shooter should receive as a result of killing three people.
The only conflict we see is this. Where's my truck? I heard you stole the engine or sold the engine out of my truck. Where's my truck? I heard you sold the engine out of my truck. And for that, this guy massacres three young men, 23, 27, and 30, on their way fishing Friday night near Frostproof. It's gut-wrenching. This is evil in the flesh. This is a guy who can hurt you just because it's the right thing for him to do at that moment in time with his three brain cells. But everybody knows that if Tony Wiggins is the prime suspect for anything that goes wrong, and that's easy to assume when at 26 years of age, he's got 230 felony charges. And he's been arrested consistently from the time he was 12 years old. I'm sure somebody thinks you ought to have counseling and pretrial release. Our goal, and we pray that the state attorney can seek the death penalty. He needs to receive a fair trial, the appropriate appeals, and then be executed. And you know what? Legally, we can't execute him like he did those three guys who were just trying to fish on Friday night, nor would we suggest that the system be as barbaric as his conduct toward our three victims.
Linda, I got to go to you first on this. I just, over and over again, this is like a refrain from me, having been the person that stood up and gave these press conferences. I know you got to give data. He talks about a fair trial, but he's calling the man evil. He goes way beyond the facts here, and he very well may be that way. But I just don't think that he's poisoning a jury pool. It's going to make voir dire and jury selection much more difficult. What are your thoughts about these kind of press conferences where you go beyond the charging decision, you give a little facts, and then you start calling people evil and that they only have three brain cells? I just think it's unprofessional.
Yeah, well, Bob, as the prosecutor in New Jersey, you couldn't do what the police chief or the sheriff, as they call him, did down there. But I do say in his defense here that when I read this case, it was just so horrible that I think it's taken him over, because the father of one of the young men who was killed, went to try to help. He didn't have a cell phone with him. And came back, and his son, his son had called him, and then his son ended up being dead. So I think he got overtaken with emotion. But you're right; it's not going to do anybody any good, because then the jurors could possibly be tainted.
Lisa, going back to your extensive law enforcement career, you're seeing this happening more and more and more with these grandstanding press conferences, which are typically supposed to be very limited so that you try the case in the court of law, not in the court of public opinion. And the genie is out of the bottle, and everyone is getting up there for that 15 minutes of fame. And in my opinion, as a prosecutor, I would have been apoplectic mad if one of my law enforcement officers got up and started discussing a case I had to prosecute.
Sure. Press conference 101 training needs to start again across the country. I agree with what Linda said, being so impassioned about it and taking it personally, but there's a time and place for that. That's in the home with your family, not on the air, not on television, national television, et cetera. So it's unfortunate that he did ad lib with those opinions about how he felt about our trigger man, but it doesn't belong there.
Yeah, I'm curious, Lisa, go back to your experience where you were. In our state, the prosecutor is the chief law enforcement officer and is in command of all of the police agencies within their county. So you have a tremendous amount of control over what gets disseminated, what information goes out, and how a case proceeds. Was that the same in your location, or are some of these places just randomly siloed and allowed to do whatever they want without any supervision of a higher civilian law enforcement component?
Right, that it was. You had your person, your designated person who was going to handle the media and press conferences, knowing full well what was going to be released and what was not going to be released in order to help the case. The police have already done their job, getting the person in custody, going ahead with the charging, and it's not a place for you to start offering opinions about a person's character.
Yeah, Linda, and you know what? That character evidence in many instances may not even be admitted in a courtroom, in a court of law, so we were allowed to talk about some evidence, but not a lot. But he's bringing out stuff that would never be admitted in a court of law. And that, to me, makes it more offensive.
And to your point, Bob, he actually gave the other two a defense, didn't he? That this guy was with that 3 brain cells, and he would just make up his mind kind of like that to do something. So in talking, he may think he's helping the issue, but he actually is hurting the prosecution of the now co-defendants.
That's why, as a prosecutor, I would have been apoplectic. So let's go to a break. We'll be right back. All right, continuing coverage on Judge Esther Salas. This hits home close to us in New Jersey. A federal court judge whose son was murdered by a demented lawyer, Den Hollander, allegedly, who shot their 20-year-old son, Mark Andurl, who I actually worked with as an assistant prosecutor in Essex County, was also shot. He will survive. He's had a number of surgeries. What a terrible tragedy. This Den Hollander, this lawyer, apparently had a list of grievances with many people's names on it, including doctors and other judges, and is now connected, the FBI connecting him to a potential murder of an individual that was a pro-men's group that was out in California, where they've got some significant evidence of him traveling out there using rent-a-cars and so on and so forth. So he is a prime person of interest in that particular murder. Linda, these people are close to us. We're also finding out some possible connection with his wife had with the Russians as a private investigation person of some sort. So there's this is just getting stranger and stranger. Terrible tragedy for the judge and for Mark, who'll have to live with this for the rest of their lives. Give me your general thoughts about what is happening in this crazy case.
He is a sick individual. I traveled, as you know, to see where he shot himself up here about 40 minutes away, because he had spent his childhood in this very beautiful, pristine area. But his childhood was marred by the fact he hated his mother. He published about it. He wrote about it. He hated women. His life was hate. hate, hate, and more hate. He hated the doctors treating him for cancer, and he wanted to only get well enough so he could finish the business he had to finish. And what was that? That was basically killing people. And maybe he did some, but he couldn't get to anybody else. His wife, allegedly, when he met her, he was assigned to Russia with Kroll Associates, and she was also the girlfriend of a Chechen mobster, according to him. But it may all be in his head. But what was definitely in his head, hate, and hatred.
Right. Well, he had appeared before Judge Salas in a case a couple of years before, nothing of any great notoriety. Lisa, you've been doing this a long time, not only on the law enforcement side, but as a national crime analyst. I have to ask, are cases just getting crazier and people more demented or more mentally ill and committing more of these horrific acts? Or was it always this way and we just know more about it now because of the media?
We're always going to have mental health issues across the country, and they're not always addressed when they need to be. His wife was threatened multiple times with deportation. She has come forward and she had said that. We already know that he was a misogynist. We know that he was a woman hater. He was a Nazi, self-proclaimed. The list went on and on. So creating this vendetta and this list of people that he wanted to execute, that he wanted to get back at, shows what his state of mind was at the time. And they're people functioning in society, holding jobs, who have this predisposition and mental health issues that are not addressed. So I do believe, unfortunately, that this is going to be part of our norm.
Yeah, a number of people had noted that he had this angry disposition, and this manifesto he wrote had been known. It's like one of those things where it's out there, but I guess you just never, I don't want to say attorneys aren't capable of doing crimes, of course, but you would just never expect it from somebody who's got, appears before judges. And unfortunately, the judge wasn't, fortunately, the judge wasn't killed. Unfortunately, Mark wasn't killed, but a 20-year-old innocent boy who had nothing to do with anything was. It's just really a shame. I want to switch gears a little bit now to this Tiger King. Now, I self-admit I have not watched this episode. I may be the series. I may be the only person on the face of the earth that hasn't. I specifically stayed away from it. But Don Lewis's family, for those of you who know Don Lewis's family, will hold a press conference next month saying they have a big announcement to make. What could it be? They appeared with a YouTube blogger to talk about their reward fund that is trying to raise $100,000. Let's listen to the family of Don Lewis.
Well, we're hoping that it will encourage someone to come forward. We do believe that there are people out there that have information, but they're afraid to come forward for various reasons. Some people are afraid they will lose their home, lose their animals. And so we're hoping this will encourage them to come forward.
For information leading to the arrest and conviction of the person responsible for the murder of Don Lewis.
Correct.
All right. So have you guys heard of a reward being out there before for your dad's case?
Yes. At the very beginning, Carol put a missing person poster out with a reward of $100,000.
Okay. I've never seen the poster, but I did see something just the other day where she talked about a reward for $100,000. I don't know if it's still active or not.
Well, hopefully it is. She would want someone to come forward to find her missing husband.
Okay. Linda, I think out of the three of us, you may have the most knowledge with respect to this particular case. So take it away. What is happening here? What is this case about? What is the meaning of all this?
Well, the only episode that I found really interesting was episode 3 of the Tiger King, and that is involving this man, Don Lewis, who was a Carol Baskin, who's one of the players in this, who the Joe Exotic, Tiger King, tried to kill. Okay, so her husband disappeared. Her first husband disappeared, and he alleged that she killed him. Okay, there's 2 camps here: the Carol Baskin case camp, the Joe Exotic case, and it's gone unsolved. And last month, the sheriff came out and said that his will, Don Lewis's will, which basically left everything to Carol Baskin, was forged. So I assume it's some follow-up on a witness dealing with that, because if it were the sheriff having evidence, he would have the press conference, as we know, not the family. So That's as best as I can tell you, Bob. You may have to watch Perry Mason on HBO for the end result.
My wife had been watching it. Every time it was on, I turned around and walked out. I don't know why. It just there's too many characters, in there for me to be able to handle after dealing a full day of work of crime. Lisa, do you have any insights into this case at all and what this all means?
Well, I tell you, that's why I'm a big fan of the show, Unsolved Mysteries. People who are still trying to have this case come to light. Their family, for sure. I mean, this is a family member that they believe was murdered by Carol Baskin. He's been missing, and there's been no evidence coming forward, and they want to shed new light on it. I love all the true crime podcasters who are out there shining light on cases that we need to see the light of day again. We can't just let it go because time has passed. So I'm an advocate for it. I'm glad the family is out there bringing awareness to it again. They want answers. He's a family member and beloved. So they deserve that.
Yes, to Lisa's point, Linda, it's funny, these true crime podcasters are presenting information, they're getting turned onto shows, and are actually, in some instances, reactivating what would be considered either a cold case or a no case into actual and serious investigative leads that law enforcement follows up on. That's kind of like the tail wagging the dog there a little bit, but it's happening more and more, don't you think?
Yeah, it's absolutely happening more and more. And I think it was reignited recently with the millennials and all, with the Serial podcast that came out. Now, we all know that he is still in prison, the man who was convicted. But people said, hey, we can track down people. We can talk to people. We can do a lot of stuff. And yes, Unsolved Mysteries is now back on Netflix because, we all want to be a little bit of Agatha Christie. And many times we can. There are people out there that know a lot about crimes, and they have to come forward, and they have to be kind of urged to come forward.
Lisa, I would say something a little controversial here, but what do you think about the idea, and it just came to my mind, that law enforcement kind of goes out and finds those reputable bloggers who are, vetted and make sure that they're solid folks to assist them?
They already do. Police personnel already work with these individuals because part of their investigation, and because the Freedom of Information Act, they're able to get files and able to get reports to follow up so they can do their own private investigations. There's TV shows being made on it right now as we speak. So police officers are open and welcoming other individuals who want to come forward, concerned citizens, and want to be detectives who want to help get closure to these cases. So law enforcement is open to that.
All right, Linda, I only got a short period of time, so within 30 seconds or less, what do you see if they're acting on behalf of law enforcement? They would be having to follow, in my mind, the same constitutional rights that law enforcement must provide to people under investigation, no?
Yeah, but they're not really acting. They're acting, they get some information from law enforcement, but they're not the agents of law enforcement. We saw that in many cases. I think it's a good thing. And what they should do is just open the files. Let people get into these cold cases that haven't been solved. Stop closing the files. Let's have a little bit of help for everybody out there who wants to assist the police.
We always used to say the answer is in the box, and a new set of eyes can make a huge difference. Lisa, Linda, I want to thank you so much. You guys are the great pros here at the Law and Crime Network. We have Law and Crime Report all week from 12 to 1. I'll be back Thursday. Have a great week.